Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the 2020 podcast, bringing clarity to business, entrepreneurship, and optometry. I am your host, Dr. Harbir Sayan. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me here to learn and to grow. As you know, if you've been following along with the podcast for a while, I like to bring on guests from different industries, or even within our industry, the optical industry, different areas within the industry to help us kind of learn about the different aspects of the industry and get different insights. And today, I hope we'll be getting some really creative insights from my amazing guest, Nico Roseilier, who is the creative director for Europa Eyewear, which includes State Optical and American Optical. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast, Nico.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Yeah, I'm super excited. You're one because, I've been out there to visit you in Chicago. I've seen the manufacturing facility. I've seen your workspace. I've talked to you in person. I've seen that. Like, I'm excited for us to kind of share that, try to bring that into life here. But also because I know you're a super energetic, entertaining guy to talk to. So I think it's going to be a fun conversation.
Yeah, you came here and you saw the behind the scenes. So
I did.
You know everything now.
I did. I was trying to take pictures, but you wouldn't let me. Other people wouldn't let me.
Some of them, yes. It's there's still some stuff, secret stuff that's
awesome.
Cooking here a little bit.
That's good to know, because I think that like for too many people, frames and eyewear is like too commoditized. It's like we just think, oh, it's just a piece of plastic, and there's so many frames, there's so many frame companies that they're all just must be the same. It's cool to hear that there is still a secret sauce or secret recipe kind of happening that's making high quality, designer stuff that's not the same as everybody else's.
Yeah, I mean, I think this we always talk about storytelling and the way we design the product. But you came here, you saw the factory, you saw it's real. We actually make products from scratch here.
Yes.
And we open. So anybody putting out there, anybody want to come and visit, we do tours twice a week
Nice.
of the factory. But I think it's important to understand where the product comes from, the way it's made. So it's really the way it starts. So, there is a secret sauce in terms of the way we treat product that is probably different than some other company out there, and then the way design is processed and thought of and this whole thing. But yeah, you came and it was great. You came in and saw the behind the scene, the way my brain work a little bit, as you can see behind me. It's a little chaotic, but
I assume there's a method to the madness there, Nico, because to me it just looks like a bunch of pictures. But we'll get into that in a little bit. But and we'll also talk a little bit about the manufacturing, because there's definitely some things that I'd like to kind of share, just my thoughts. No secrets about the manufacturing process, but just my thoughts on what I saw and kind of impression that it left. But let's rewind the clock a little bit. How did you get to this position as a creative director, and what does that exactly entail?
Oh, wow. So I'll try to make a long story short, because it's been 20 plus years now. I moved to this country, despite what some people think that they may still need subtitle on the bottom of the screen for some stuff I'm going to say. But, I study, I'm from France, study micromechanics and engineering originally, then went to art school in Paris, study different type of art. This study actually went to then architecture and industrial design, and then moved here with a friend with two suitcase and $600, and that was pretty much it. That's what we had when we moved here.
Wow.
And worked a lot on different projects, met a lot of people. So I moved to New York first. I was in New York for 10 years. And we did art installation to some advertisement, designing booth for trade show. And that's kind of how I started to meet people from the eyewear industry. Worked a little bit with Bevel, where a spectacle works with company, doesn't exist anymore, but at the time called Bada from Los Angeles. Scojo Vision at the time. So worked with a lot of different things, and then decided to close the company. Then I got a phone call from my friends, became very like dear friends and family at Modo. And I went to work with those guys for 4 years, designing and creative direction over there until I moved to Los Angeles for another 10 years, worked there for REM. Um, and then now Chicago, sunny side Chicago, I guess. I don't know. At least
That's
today.
well, you've moved around a lot. You know what? I wanted to. I don't think I knew the 2 suitcases and $600 thing. And that kind of stuff is always so intriguing to me. I think also, being the child of immigrants, who moved to, my parents moved out of India. They moved to the UK at first. With a similar sort of story, right? With not a lot of money in their pocket and just some hope that they'll be able to make it. I find that kind of story so inspiring. And I'm used to hearing it from the previous generation, somebody who moved, in the 60s or the 70s or something like that. But for someone like yourself who moved in the 90s?
Early 2000, yeah.
Early 2000s. Mm-hmm. That's still so inspiring to hear, like there's still that kind of motivation and hunger for someone to leave their country where they're comfortable and come somewhere new. What, if you don't mind sharing a little bit more about that, like what did it feel like? Were you scared? Were you excited? Like, how did you even go about the first couple things, like finding a place to live and finding work?
I was young, so I was really naive, and I think that does help a lot.
Helps a lot. It does, yeah.
I didn't speak a word of English.
Oh, wow.
So my friend who became my business partner, she was French. We met at this architecture school and design in Paris. She lived in the US for a bit. So she worked for eyewear company doing sales. And so she lived in New York for a few years. And she was not going to move back. Her and her wife were living in Brooklyn, and then she wanted to go back to school. So that's why she moved back to Paris, just for a short amount of time. That's where we met and started to work and design together. So when I came the first time was during Thanksgiving, which is probably why I love Thanksgiving. The idea of like sitting around the table and eating and drinking all day. That's more my French side probably.
Yeah, exactly.
But we came here because at the time I designed lamps, like a new concept. It was lighting design, and I got the opportunity to show in the gallery in Soho. And during that week we spent here, we met so many people. And it was really inspiring to meet people, the energy in New York and the way everything was moving so fast compared to what I was used to. And so when we went back to Paris, I was in school and also designing for a company doing like lighting design for different hotels and stuff around the world. But it was so inspiring, and she wanted to move back to New York. And I was like, you know what? Let's do it. And so we sold, and then we were roommate too in Paris. So we basically sold everything we had. It was like 2 suitcases, $600, and we moved to New York. So the first, could not even go to the deli by myself because I didn't speak a word of English. It was really like crazy.
Wow.
And so we slept on a few of our friends' couch for a few weeks. Then we found a loft that we could afford the first months off in Brooklyn, in Bed-Stuy. And we lived there a bit. Then I learned how to be a bartender, and I was babysitting. And that's kind of the way I learned English, actually.
Wow.
I was babysitting kids because they're very patient and they talk slower.
That's awesome.
Bartending was a great job to meet people, to learn the language, and that's kind of where I got my. Some people know me like making cocktails, so that's kind of where I got the the love of that.
Yeah.
But it was really humbling. I think that's more what it was. Moving somewhere you have no idea about the culture. You do not speak the language, and it took a lot of work. It took a lot of patience. Now, will I do it today all over again at my age now? No, probably not. I mean, it's definitely it was the perfect time to do it. And I do remember my dad being like, "Why are you going there? You had job opportunities in Paris, which were great." And I just decided, no, that was the right time, the right moment, and I just followed my guts and so, but it is interesting to hear also you talking about it, from the aspect of your parents, because, it just really occurred me the other day. We just came back from a trip to France.
Yeah.
And I brought my kids to see where I grew up in the school and everything. And it just kind of occurred to me. I was like, oh my God, yeah, that's interesting, like to see it on their perspective too, because, they know I have an accent. They don't think that, they get used to it. So that's different. But it's a great experience. It definitely, I do believe that things happen for a reason in life, and good and bad. And it's always a learning experience from everything. And so that's kind of the way I see it. But
well, definitely there's not a lot of people would be open to that dramatic of a change, right? Like it's scary, it's intimidating. I didn't realize you didn't speak any English. That's amazing. And to come out here or to New York and to just to make it happen. But I guess anywhere of any place for you to go, New York would be like the place where you're kind of like just thrown into the fire and you got to figure it out. It's probably the best place to be. It's the like melting pot, right, for North America. Yeah. If you'd moved to like Montreal or something, it might have been a little more cushy and easy for you.
So funny you saying that, because actually that was my plan before I met my friend. What plan was to move to Montreal, and it was like, well, easy. I don't have to learn English. But life decided otherwise. And
no, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So the word I keep saying there is inspiration. It's inspiring. I would love to hear like that. That's inspiring in one way. But like for your actual work, when you're trying to come up with new designs and, trying to keep things fresh, where does that inspiration come from? Where do you find that, inspiration to come up with new designs and colors and all these different things every year, every season?
Over the years, they have changed, it's kind of interesting. And due to social media and internet and everything, for sure, things have changed very differently. It used to be way more based. I mean, it's still based on travel and then people I meet and places I go, for sure. I never really look into our own industry for inspiration, because I'm always afraid that if I look too much into it, then there's a lot of repetition, and I feel like everybody does that. Everybody does my job, does that. And we're all going to do the same thing all the time, and it's going to get boring. Yeah. So I always look a lot at architecture, because that's still one of my passion. So architecture, I do look a lot into textile and patterns. And so, all the trend boards I do, it's always based on that kind of that kind of thing. There's a way colors mix together. There's the way texture mix together. But yeah, for most of the time, it's definitely I'm a very visual person. So the way I do it is that it's basically kind of like segment of 6 months where I just grab pictures. It's just a constant saving pictures from tear down to thing on my phone, mainly on my phone now these days. But and then at some point, things started to develop. It's almost like developing a pictures, back in the dark room, where the layers start to make sense, and a bigger picture or a feeling start to appear a little bit more. And so that's kind of where the way I work. And then from there, that's kind of where the direction goes, the storytelling. Now, it's a different process now that I'm with Europa versus my life before. At least the 10 years in LA was a little bit different, because I've done 15 years of licensing. So when you work for a license and you design for a brand that is a bigger brand, I work for Converse and John Barbados and Tumi. It's a bit different because you take your aesthetic, your design, and then you try to apply it to what the brand's direction is going. So in some way, it's a little bit easier to develop the film, because you have that more of a guidance. And then now, and the reason why I moved here, as to Chicago, was actually not for the weather. It was for the fact that Europa is an independent brand with no license, and being able to get that freedom of creating the story as we go. And that's, I think, in terms of designing, it's really a main thing. But to give you a little bit of an idea, there's a bunch of trends boards everywhere. But this is kind of what things looks like.
Wow.
Where there's a lot of texture and patterns, and depending on the season, things change.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the way it goes.
I'll just say, if you're listening, I think most people generally will listen to this as a podcast. But if you get a sec, go to YouTube and watch this, because you want to kind of see Nico's background first of all, with all the pictures and stuff, but also these. Did you call them? Is it a trend board?
Yeah, it's a trend board. It's a storyboard. And it really helped me guiding where the collection is going. So
yeah. So can you sort of walk me through a little bit of, like, let's say you see some things that you're finding things that are similar in some aspect, like there's some sort of consistency or through line or something that's you're seeing in each of these, and you're putting them, like, because the colors on all of those look kind of, one trend board looked like it's sort of blue gray, one of them looked like it was more whatever, a different color, and then how does that become a frame?
So let me grab something. So it'd be better for you to see that. So
you're trying to decide how much you're comfortable showing. Here, we don't want to give away the secret sauce yet.
So
that's so cool.
This, for example, you see, like, this is one of the latest. This is 2022 State. And that shows you a little bit. So there's a lot about the textures, but it's a lot about color association and the way things goes together. There's a general feel to it, or the general finish to it. And so that helps, like, kind of telling what the story is going to be. And
that in itself looks like a piece of art, a work of art, what you just showed me. That was so cool.
So then from there, so I do that first. And then, there's obviously, we have a system and then a business, to fulfill. So we look at how many styles we want, we look at what material was doing well for us, what do we need, what's missing, etc. So we do kind of like a roadmap of where we want the collection to be in terms of purely physical frames. And then from there, I go and I start designing product. So I do all the design from, by hand. So it's really, those are the two tools I use, it's a pencil and a whiteout. That's the only two things I use. But so I do that, I do the drawing by hand, and then from there, I will put it into a computer. Then I'll send it to the factory. That's the nice thing about being here, is the factory is 2 doors down. So, that's really cool. And we'll do, so I have like a rule of 3, which I don't know why, but it became like this over the years. And basically, after 3 modification, if it still doesn't feel right, it goes out, and I keep moving. So I just feel like, if you work too hard on something, at some point, it just doesn't feel natural. So that's kind of the way it works. Then from there, I'll get an final drawings. Then we'll go and make a 3D print. So for example, we'll make a 3D print of what the shape's going to look like, and it's pretty straightforward. There's no hinges or anything. This is more for us to put it on just to see the proportion is right. Then we'll do modification on that if needed. And then we're going to make one final frame. Meanwhile, I go back to that board and I go to the color room. So we have a color room here, which we keep all our acetate, metal swatches, etc. And then from there, I go back and then I work out of big boards where there's the model and then start applying colors. So, and that's basically, and so I design a year ahead. So the idea is on that board, you're able to see the story, the underlying story of how the colors mix together, how material is utilized from one model to another release, and how things flow together. It helps on not repeating things. It helps on like a lot of different things, but it's really where it goes. And then from there, we do full color sample. And so in general, I will design double of what we need, and then always sample more color than we need. So, and then we have a meeting, and then we narrow down exactly where we want the line to be.
Yeah, wow.
And then that's when we there's some passionate argument about, what people like, and when I think and then and those are great. Those are fun meetings to have.
That's awesome. So you guys do actually get together and say, I like this one, I don't like that one, and there's like some debate about which ones to keep, and that's good to hear, because I to me, again, I think for a lot of people it feels like perhaps okay, draw this one, gone, okay, next one, like more like a production line type of situation. But for you guys, there's a lot more passion, and that creativity involved. I really like that the rule of three. Sorry, go on. I'll let you finish.
I was going to say, I think that's what makes difference between some companies out there. We really love the product. We love the process. There's really two main ways to design to do product these days. There's maybe the more complicated and definitely more lengthwise and development that the time consuming of doing it from scratch, and then there's some company that just pick from existing stuff from vendors. We do believe of obviously the quality of our product, but we do believe that bringing something different and creating those stories. I see my job more as a storyteller at this point than anything else, because it's we go to a trade show, and I used to go to trade shows and then come back from trade show and be like, oh my God, why? Because there's so many companies out there that do amazing job, amazing works. And then you're like, oh my God, like, how many more frames do you need?
Yeah. Yeah, there are a lot. When you think you've seen them all, you realize you've only seen a tiny fraction.
Correct.
Of all the different,
the one that stick really more to people, the one you remember, is the one that really have a point of view, that have a story to tell. And then it not necessarily means it's good for your consumers in your practice, but is that story to tell is very important. And then you got to create and curate those stories that fits with wherever your practice or stores are. But I think it's I still go to shows, and and I look at stuff around, and I'm like, after a week or two after the show, I'm like, oh my God, those guys were so good, and
that's the stuff that, like, I think is I really came away from Europa when we visited there. It made me realize that there really is a big difference between certain brands and the product, the way it's manufactured, the story they tell. And since then, and I think I was already on the trajectory, but since that, back in June, when I came back to my office, I was like, okay, I need more brands that tell stories. I need my team to be able to tell a story and not just say, this is XYZ brand that's mainstream that you've heard of before. We need a few of those, but we need some of those that are like, but let me tell you, so we can get passionate, but let me tell you about what this one's made and what the shape means and the, what the color is and so on, and things like that really, they resonate with some people, like some patients who come in and say, no, just show me the brand name. But there's some people who want something different, so they can go tell their friends the story, and they can be the interesting person in that circle, and it just kind of keeps trickling down, right? So there's a lot of value to that, and it's incredible. Like, you guys are literally doing that from the ground up, like from scratch, from, in the most literal term. You're literally drawing on your piece of paper and making that come to reality. That to me was all super, super cool. I do want to quickly go back to the rule of threes, because I think that's actually a really valuable thing to kind of have in life in general, right? Because you don't want to get bogged down. I'm one of those people who believes in the whole, what's the right word? What's the phrase? Perfection is the, I can't remember what it was. Perfection is the enemy of like done, or getting things done, or whatever.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly how the phrase goes now, but I'm one of those people who's like, let's just keep moving forward. Okay, if this is not going to work, okay, let's put that aside. Let's go to the next thing. I'd rather keep making progress than be sitting here over and over trying to perfect something, and then it just never gets done.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a good way to put a tangible sort of structure to it, right? The rule of three. So I've tried this thing 3 times, or I've given it a really good effort a few times. Maybe this is not happening today. Maybe we'll put that aside. Let's go work on the next thing. I think that can be really helpful in business. It can be helpful in creative endeavors. So however you came up with it, I personally find that super valuable. So thanks for sharing that.
I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, hold on, I need to turn this thing off. Sorry. Just realized it might make a little bit more noise. But I used to work with somebody in one of the brands I used to design. And she was the one that brought up that rule of three. And I remember the first time she brought it, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I realized that, it's a natural thing to do. And it doesn't take much discipline, but it really helps on not getting cut off with sometimes things we do, So for me, it's like looking for shape and redesigning and it never comes out right, and the frame comes out and sampled, and it's not right. And so you want to keep on spending more time, but doing that rule, it really helps kind of simplify the process, and then just keep moving forward. There's always the next shape. There's always the next product. There's always the next project. And even now when I go back and look at old stuff that I designed like 15 years ago, and I'm like, oh my God, I was like, I will change this and I will change that,
Of course.
Because you can, you really can keep going on forever, but it's not good because it's not productive, but it's also, I don't think it's healthy. So
yeah. Well, the saying is perfection is the enemy of good, or perfection is the enemy of progress. But either way, there's always going to be times like I could go back to the first couple of podcasts I recorded and be like, oh, I need to check. That was not very well produced, or the interview was not very good, or whatever. I was stuttering constantly. I still do that anyways. But it's funny because we talked about this before we, started recording. Like I'm comfortable with like stumbling on my words and stuttering a little bit, and I'm good with that, and just keep moving forward. Because if I had to go back and edit every time I slipped up, or if I had to make sure that I never slipped up in a podcast interview, like I would never get it done. So I think it's super valuable to have some sort of limitation on that, and then you can just keep moving forward.
Yeah, I think you can apply this in life in everything you do. It's just really like, it's we can all thrive for better. Just sometimes, we just have to accept it is what it is, and we just keep moving forward, and that's just the way it is.
That's it. So we touched on it a few times already, but you talked about some of your process at State. When I was there, just amazing. Like, soldering on like the nose piece, or the bridge, or the way the hinge is assembled, and all the crazy amounts of machines used to create the acetate, the fronts, and all of that kind of stuff is just incredible that it's all done on site. Why is it important to you? Why do you think it's something worth sharing that these frames are actually manufactured there, where you are, in Chicago, in the US?
Well, it's really surprised me over the years doing this job that the amount of people that do what I do, in some different perspective, that I've never been to a factory or have no idea the way the product is made. And then, I know that when Europa started the factory, it was the same thing for our customer, who have been dispensing eyewear for 20 plus years, 30 years, 40 years, and never seen the way the product is made. So, it's not the reason why the factory was made. The factory was made to bring back manufacturing of eyewear in America when it was gone for decades. And really the idea of craft and doing a beautiful product and really bring that knowledge and know-how, back here. But it's really been interesting to hear the different stories of people who've been to come and visited and be like, oh my God, I had no idea that that's the way you make a frame. I visited factory all around the world. I really went, not every factory because that would be impossible, but a lot of different countries to see where product is made. And and I was like really amazed when first time I came here. When I came here the first time, so Scott Shapiro, that Scott and I knew each other from the industry, and then he called me one day and he's like, "Hey, do you want to come over?" And I was like, "Sure." And so a friend of mine, my dear friend James Pina from 2020, you may know, was like, "You got to go because you got to go and see the factory." It's like, even if nothing happened, at least go check out the factory. And so that was the deal. So, and I remember the first time I came in to see the factory, and it was half the size of what it is today from what you saw. Wow. I was blown away. I was blown away to not just the fact of making product here, but the fact of, making the product right and really caring about every single step, all those little steps in between that does make a difference when you hold a product. Now, there's beautiful factories all around the world. I want to believe that it's not really so much about country of origin. It's really about the craft and who really, are able to do that. We're just really lucky to have this beautiful factory here. And then the amount, I'm lucky because I was not here at the beginning. So I came here kind of in the middle of the road, and it's already amazing. So, and it's only getting better every day. At least it's been getting way bigger over the last 4 years.
That's awesome.
But it's, this idea, and that's something I really love here at Europa and the other brands is, are the idea of transparency. We are not hiding anything. This is why we're giving tour to everywhere, from our customer to the consumer who will buy a pair of State or American Optical. They want to come and they can schedule a visit to see how the frames is made. There is an idea of transparency that will show you how things made. And we're not hiding anything. We're start from that sheets of acetate, and from there we do all the way the process. So, and it's and then now we're doing metals. So with the acquisition of American Optical, the last 3 years, we've been adding metal factory here as well, and that's how we double up the size. It's really cool. I mean, to be honest, I forget sometimes. I'm here in my office and designing away and doing stuff, and then I go 2 doors down and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot there's a factory here. Because it's not something that really, at least not like what the format has been over the last decades. And so good.
That's funny that you could still forget that there's that huge tens of thousands of whatever square foot factory in the back. But part of that actually, I bet, is related to, we touched on this briefly when we were talking before about you kind of being in your like flow state, right? When you're in the zone, you probably forget that anything else exists. I imagine that's probably pretty important for a creative person, is to kind of get into that flow state. Do you find yourself getting into those zones where you just sort of, everything else sort of disappears?
Yeah. I work on a lot of brands, so I dedicate days for different brands. That's usually, and then some days are just not flowing. So when, that day is, again, it's kind of that rule of 3, like don't force it. So if it doesn't come out, I find myself that some days, some weeks, it's just not working. So I go work on something else. It's fine.
Yeah.
Spend a lot. So, but or you got to change scenery and go for a walk or whatever it is, to get inspired or. It's really part of the process. I learn on how to not try to force it, because if I force it, I'm never happy with the end result. So I'd rather have to work more hours at some point versus try to just push it and it's just not working.
So having that flexibility in your sort of overall schedule and your productivity is important too, right? So some days may not be as productive. Some days will be super productive and you got to work longer hours just to kind of maximize that productivity. Having that flexibility is really important. So let's talk about Vision Expo. So I know you do a lot of stuff at Vision Expo, some pretty cool installations that you're responsible for. The next one coming up in just a couple of weeks here is Vision Expo West in Vegas. Do you have anything specifically going on that you're part of, that you're doing?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things at Vision Expo. I'm always looking forward to see all the friends and, so we've done, I've curated a museum with the Heritage Optical Museum in Southbridge in Massachusetts, where American Optical used to be originally the factory. So I work with those guys, amazing people over there. Rick and Diane have been tremendous amount of help. On my side, just to do research, to be able to understand the brand, learn the brand, really educate myself into American Optical when we did the acquisition. But the last 2 years, we've done the museum that you saw that is now in our office here, retracing the story of the brand from 1833 to today. So this has been a great success. People really enjoyed it. So I don't know if we're going to be able to tap that, but been working on a new exhibit for our booth that will be shown the first time in a few weeks, which the idea is representing our factory. So as we're talking about the manufacturing, it's kind of the idea. So we are bringing small vignettes of our process and showing the process about manufacturing into of a more art installation kind of setup. So, I can't tell you too much about it because I'm working on it. So there's not so much secret sauce here, more than I'm working on it every day to do this thing together. So it's pretty exciting. I think it would be great for people who cannot come and see us, or the people who are still doubting that we're making product here. We'll be showing off basically what we are so proud of, and that's our craft, men's and women back there doing what they do best. I mean, it's really so we will be showing that in terms of the acetate factory and in terms of the metal factory. So we'll have
Very
that.
Cool. And that's going to be at the booth at the State or Europa booth at Vision Expo? Okay.
Yeah. And then the Now Pavilion. So as you know, I've been this has been my project for being working on this for years and years. And I'm super proud and happy that we were able to do the first edition at the last show in New York. So this is going to be, so for the people who haven't been there, it's a trend pavilion. Is basically showing what's happening in our industry in a very democratic way. So it's not about the brands. It's not about how big your company is or how small it is. It's really putting everybody together for what we do, which is designing eyewear. And so we have a committee that we change every year that include people from the press, retailers, influencers, and then different people. So, but we came up New York with 4 different themes that represented the direction of our industry. And then we're able to show this. So that was the first edition. The second one would be New York. So it's only in 6 months from now.
Yeah.
It's crazy to
I
think.
know it's crazy to think that because it seems like, oh, it's next year, but it's actually not that far away.
Yeah.
So it must be nuts for you because we have Vision Expo West coming up here just like again in a few weeks, and like as soon as that's done, you're gonna be on to like, okay, let's get ready for East.
Yeah, pretty much right away. But I'm very happy we are going to be. So it's going to be a new committee. We're also going to be growing the now. We're looking at doing some new program and then some new competition, and so it's definitely a part of the Vision Expo that it's going to be growing. I'm very happy with it. It's just what I think the industry needed to really bring everybody together in one platform to just show up.
There were four. You mentioned as well 4 categories or whatever of that Now Pavilion. Can you tell me what those were again, please?
So it was. God, already moved on.
Oh, sorry, I put you on the spot. But because I can't remember myself, but I just remember there was something like about like you said, diversity and that. Yeah. So there was like something about ethnicity or something. If I'm not mistaken,
something about diversity and inclusion. One was about environmental and
right, okay,
environmentally friendly, and then fashion and technology.
Oh, okay.
And cool. Then that was really interesting as we went through. So we got 160 frames submitted, which was fantastic.
Yeah, that's amazing.
The first one, and going through all of that and understanding where the product was, what category, where we were able to identify some also category that was going, across some others, and that was great to see. And even category that is great to see that it's growing. So, obviously the fashion side is the obvious side, but
Well, personally, I like the diversity one, right? So I like that there was designers from different backgrounds and ethnicities and whatever. I thought that was because I've never really thought of it that way. I always just think of frame manufacturers as just sort of a company, not the fact that there's somebody from this heritage or this background who is the designer or the owner, and like the inspiration or their story that they've brought into that design of that frame. I thought that part was super cool. That part of the exhibit was great.
Yeah, it's about, business owned, but also even purely design, the frames are designed a different way depending on facial structure, and we're all different, which is what's beautiful about it. And, how do you, adjust your design to really fit different people? And so, I was that. And then I was so happy with this category because, first of all, I was happy to see that there was more than I was afraid that category would be too small in our industry, and thank God that diversity and inclusion part of our industry has been changing and is being finally, over the last few years. I'm very happy with that. But I was happy to get so many submissions and then seeing, really that becoming bigger. And then there is, I think it's just that time to just think about it differently and really opening people's eyes on it. So
yeah,
and been doing a lot of work on that. So my friend Terence Lacran and I worked together very closely a few years back and we started this auction. Sorry for this beep thing. Sorry, there you go.
It's okay.
But we started that. It was like 2 years ago, and doing this auction just by an idea. Him and I talking one night and saying, "Hey, I was like, look, as designers, we all have like one piece of one of a kind or thing that means differently." And I was like, well, how about we put an auction together and raise some money? And we did. We raised quite a bit of money on the first auction. We just did a second one a few months ago. And then from that was born, Terence, basically pushed this whole idea and really put it together to create the scholarship, Opening Your Eyes. And and it's really being a part of a lot of things of what we do, what I do, and the collaboration I did with Maxwell was really part of that as well, and supporting the scholarship. So yeah, diversity and inclusion is definitely was a big theme, and it still remain very important. But I'm so happy to see that we're actually making a tremendous progress.
Yeah,
it's great.
That's really fantastic. Really, really important to see that these different ethnicities and diverse backgrounds get to be showcased, and that they're making their way in an industry that maybe was for a long time kind of seemed a bit bland, or kind of dominated by just a couple of big players, or however you want to phrase it, right? It's really cool to see. I think that's really where it's going these days. Is, as I was saying earlier, like, we like to be able to tell a story of, this is where the frame comes from, here's what the designer was thinking, or the owner is doing. So the more of that, the better. Definitely, the more we can share those different stories, the better. And I think that's cool that you're really helping to highlight that. So Nico, anything else you want to tell me or tell us about yourself, or about State, about Vision Expo, before we wrap up?
Man, there's so much we can talk about. I mean, I can talk all day,
Yeah, no kidding.
No, there's a lot of stuff. Look, I mean, for the show, we're talking about the show. I'm very excited. Obviously, we're bringing some new product, and we're going to be showing a lot of new stuff. American Optical is growing very well. We're as the part of the little secret, but we're going to be we'll be launching soon, early next year, the ophthalmic part of the collection. So that's really exciting. We're bringing some new product obviously at the show, that new exhibit, and then just want to see old friends, and then makes new one. And I think it's a great time. So and after being this whole pandemic, which we all had to go through, I think each time we have the opportunity of seeing each other, and then being able to share and share stories and experience. And I don't believe that we joke about the secret sauce and the design, but the bottom line is really, like, we're all one big family. So we're that's really kind of the way I look at it.
I love it.
Then we all have our stories, and then that's what's make it interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can people find you, or like learn more about yourself, or State, or Europa, or
State, it's stateopticalco.com. American Optical, it's aoeyewear.com. europaeye.com. And then if you want to see a little bit more behind the scenes stuff, it's usually my Instagram, which is just my name, Nico Roseilier. But that's pretty much where you'll see a little bit of everything. That's just just the way.
And then you'll catch Nico hustling around during Expo. He's always going here, going there.
Yeah, wear good shoes. If it's your first show, just wear good shoes.
Wear good shoes. That's a good call. Good call. All right. Well, thank you so much, Nico. I really appreciate it, man. Like I said, it's always fun talking to you. Always learn something every time I talk to you. So that's always great. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in for another episode of the 2020 podcast, Canada's #1 optometry podcast. I look forward to seeing you guys again very, very soon.
Thank you.